Welcome back to the Global Ledger. I'm Justin. As we begin ARC VII, which is the global dollar system applied, we need to start with a term that's used constantly and almost always misunderstood. That is reserve currency. You'll hear it framed sometimes as a privilege, a status symbol, a political designation I've heard before, or something that can be replaced by decision. But a reserve currency isn't declared. It's earned and continuously maintained. Today, we're going to strip this concept down to its mechanics. By the end of the episode, you'll understand what a reserve currency actually is, why very few currencies qualify, and why replacing one is far harder than it sounds. Let's get into it. Here is what a reserve currency isn't. We need to clear this up. A reserve currency is not the currency of the largest economy, the currency with the highest interest rates, or the most powerful country, or the currency policymakers may want the world to use. Those things clearly help, but none of them are sufficient. If reserve currency status were political, it would change a lot, more frequently than I think we could imagine. But it doesn't. So what is it that a reserve currency does? A reserve currency performs three critical global functions. First, it is a unit of account. Global trade, contracts, balance sheets are denominated in it. Okay, so that's number one. Second, it is a medium of exchange. It settles cross-border transactions reliably and at scale. Third, it is a store of value under stress. When uncertainty rises, demand for it increases, not decreases. Okay, that last function, store of value under stress, is the hardest to achieve and the most important. So the real requirements here, elasticity, okay? This is the central requirement most discussions miss, I think. A reserve currency must be elastic. It must be able to expand during periods of stress, contract during periods of calm, and do so without losing credibility. Global demand for liquidity is not stable. It spikes suddenly. A reserve currency must be able to meet that demand, even when it originates outside its home country. That requires deep, flexible financial markets, not just issuance. It also requires depth, safety, and collateral. Reserve currencies are built on markets. They're not built on symbols. Specifically, deep government bond markets, reliable settlement infrastructure, legal certainty, and collateral that is widely accepted. Global institutions don't just hold a reserve currency. They hold assets denominated in it. Those assets must be liquid in size, usable in stress, and trusted across all of these different jurisdictions. This is why reserve currency status is really inseparable from collateral markets. Confidence is structural and not emotional. And confidence in a reserve currency is not about belief. It's about experience. Okay, market participants ask, can I fund myself in this currency during stress? Can I sell assets without moving the price? Can I settle obligations when volatility rises? If the answer has historically been yes, confidence persists. If the answer is maybe, confidence is cumulative. And you could even say it's fragile as well. And so why do very few currencies qualify? Okay, this is where the constraint becomes clear. To be a reserve currency, a system must offer large quantities of safe liquid assets, open capital markets, a lender of last resort function, and tolerance for persistent external demand. Most countries actively avoid these conditions. They involve exposure to global shocks, loss of domestic control, and structural trade-offs. Reserve currency status is not free by any means. It's a burden, really, as much as it is a benefit. And here's why replacement is so difficult, which brings us to the question everybody asks. Very common question. Can another currency replace the current reserve currency? So, in theory, yes. But in practice, replacement requires decades of market development, global trust earned under stress, deep collateral pools, and I got to include a willingness to absorb volatility. You don't replace a reserve currency by announcement. You replace it by outperforming it in crisis. So, in history shows how rare that is. Okay. So this is why ARC VII matters. Let's connect this up to this. Okay. This ARC, because once you understand what a reserve currency actually does, you can understand global dollar shortages, offshore funding stress, currency mismatches, and why crises often emerge far from where policy is set. Reserve currency dynamics are not abstract. They shape capital flows, interest rates, emerging market stability, and they shape global growth. And they do so kind of quietly, until they can't or they don't. So a reserve currency is not chosen. It is used. It's relied upon and stress tested over and over and over again, repeatedly. It survives not because it's perfect, but because it has proven elastic. It's proven liquid and reliable when it matters most. So I want to thank you for listening to the first episode from ARC VII. We talked about the reserve currency and why it's kind of difficult to replace, what it isn't, and how it's used. So in episode 62, we're going to talk about petrodollars, okay, and how energy really became monetary infrastructure. So once again, I'm Justin, and thank you for being here.